Hello everyone, and today I'm going to be talking about two very iconic Goosebumps monsters. One's from the older series and the other is from the newer Goosebumps Horrorland series, and that is Jonathan Chiller and Amaz-O. And so Jonathan Chiller I view as one of the most creative Goosebumps monsters of all time. I mean, there's so many creative Goosebumps monsters out there, don't get me wrong. And he's probably not even my top 20 favorite Goosebumps monsters. I just really like the way he is in his book, because he's basically a monster, like your average Goosebumps monster, but he's a human. I really enjoyed that about Jonathan Chiller. I also like it how they gave him some backstory. It was just, and also in some parts in the story that he appeared in. He mainly appeared, though, in the Horror at Chiller House, and so in that story, though, it told some parts of the book from his perspective, and I found that very interesting and cool as for the book as a whole. But there are a few mysteries that about Jonathan Chiller's past that are left unanswered, and one of those is how come he has so many magical items. Basically, Jonathan Chiller owns the Horrorland gift shop in, Horrorland, and basically he has a bunch of magical items in there, like Slappy, Blue Kirkloo Houndtooth, I can't even remember all there is, like the stuff that grows. It's not monster blood, but it's very similar. And so, there's all this stuff in Jonathan Chiller's gift shop. But where did he acquire this? He even created a robot in one of the books. I mean, this guy is super, super smart. He even knows the existence of aliens. So, Jonathan Chiller, very smart person, but, he can be really smart, but how can he get the technology to build those robots? How can he acquire all of these shopfuls of magical items? And how come he knows the existence of aliens, actually has an alien item, when most people in the Goosebumps universe don't even know aliens exist? And so, that explanation for that is Amaz-O, the magician from the 41st, I believe, Goosebumps book, Bad Hair Day. I'm not 100% on that one, but I think that is the perfect explanation for how Jonathan Chiller has acquired all this knowledge and has acquired so many magical items. But before I go on to the evidence and stuff like that, spoiler warning for the Bad Hair Day. Yet some major spoilers for that one, mainly I'm talking about Amaz-O and his past and stuff like that. And I would say some spoilers for some of the Horrorland books, mainly the ones that Jonathan Chiller appear in, which this is just at the top of my head, so forgive me if I miss one, but Little Shop of Hamsters, Where the Ghost Dog Howls, Weirdo Halloween, The Horror at Chiller House, The Wizard of Ooze, I think there was one more, but basically, those are all the books that Jonathan Chiller appear in. I'm going to have some minor spoilers for each of those books. I'm mainly going to be talking about, though, Jonathan Chiller himself. And the book that he mainly appeared in, The Horror at Chiller House, I haven't even read in like 3 years due to me not actually owning a copy of that book. I actually read it from the library. So my memory will be a little rusty on The Horror at Chiller House, so definitely some minor spoilers for that one. But with that out of the way, guys, let's get into the evidence. But the first thing I need to prove is that this theory is even implausible. Because in Bad Hair Day, we see Amaz-O as a rabbit. It turns out he was a very popular magician, but then he was turned into a rabbit by a rival one who actually did real magic. And so he was turned into a rabbit, and that's how he stays to this day. How can he be both Amaz-O and Jonathan Chiller? It mentions in the book that Amaz-O was at the top of his career, meaning he most likely was younger and stuff like that. And Jonathan Chiller is portrayed as more of an older person. So it doesn't really make sense for that to happen beforehand. And plus, he was at the height of his career before he turned into a rabbit. So, most likely it wasn't after, if this theory is correct. I mean, not after, but before. So I think it's after, because really, when you think about it, it'd be pretty easy for Amaz-O to turn back into a human, and probably was able to do that in the book itself. Because, first off, he was able to transform and bring back the main protagonist's sister in Bad Hair Day. And also, he was able to transform the main protagonist into a rabbit. So he clearly knows how to bring people from rabbit form back to normal form, and so on and so forth. Plus, he's skilled in magical stuff and has magical items. So, you'd think maybe he turn back. It seems most likely that he would and can. And don't forget to mention that the spell cast by this one wizard probably wasn't that strong. Like, maybe you could say that he cast such a powerful spell on him that it wasn't unbreakable. I don't really think so, because the wizard wasn't popular. That's the reason that he turned Amaz-O into a rabbit, because he wasn't popular. But, I mean, if he probably would be popular, since he said that he did participate in real magic. So, if he did some really powerful magic spell, then I think most people would, like that, and he'd be really popular. So, unless his magic tricks were a bit lower key and not as huge as something a big wizard would do. Also, there's the fact that Amaz-O can talk. In most of the other Goosebumps books where witches or wizards transform children into animals, namely chicken, they're unable to talk. But Amaz-O can talk. And so I think this is because the spell probably wasn't that strong. So that means most likely that Amaz-O can turn back into a human. So with that out of the way, I think there's pretty much no other evidence to disprove this theory. But what evidence is there to prove it? Well, the first thing is that it will explain how Jonathan Chiller has gained all these magical items. Because when you think about it, they're very similar. In Amaz-O's magic box, he has a bunch of actually real magical things, including a carrot that when you eat it, it would transform you into a rabbit, which is what happened to the main protagonist's sister in Bad Hair Day. And he has numerous items like this. He also has electronic snakes in his package that are very, very realistic. And so, yeah, there's just a bunch of different things that he owns that are magical items. And it's very similar to what Jonathan Chiller has. He has some very magical items from all across the globe. He has, again, the Blue Kirk Blue Houndtooth, Slappy the Dummy. He's just got all of these items and stuff like that. So it'd make a whole lot of sense for him to be Amaz-O, because they both technically have sort of the same catalog of items. They have the exact same thing that we see from the book, since we don't really get a good look at what all Amaz-O has. But basically, they are both into magical items. Amaz-O really isn't that magical himself. He sort of is and sort of isn't. But his main powers come from not his magical powers, but mainly his magical items. And it's sort of the same thing with Jonathan Chiller. Also, both are experienced, it seems like, with robots due to Amaz-O creating those very realistic snakes. And Jonathan Chiller sort of did this with people in Weirdo Halloween. And so, there's that. And Jonathan Chiller also is really good at makeup and bringing to life inanimate objects, again, like the robots. Also, the costumes that he created, they're super realistic to what a Horrorland horror looks like. And Amaz-O sort of does the same thing with his, it would seem like, ventriloquist dummy that he has in Bad Hair Day. He uses that dummy, sort of, and he makes it almost realistic. I think this is through magical stuff, but it is very similar to sort of what Jonathan Chiller has an expertise in. And also, one quick thing to note is that Jonathan Chiller and Amaz-O are the only humans, I think, revealed to work for Horrorland itself. All the other people who work at Horrorland are portrayed to be, what is it? I'm so sorry, guys. I just forgot. Horrorland horrors. They're all Horrorland horrors, except for maybe the owner during the 70s, but that's it. And Amaz-O and Jonathan Chiller are the only really human owners in this area. So it would make a whole lot of sense for Jonathan Chiller to be Amaz-O. It also makes sense due to Jonathan Schiller, acquiring all these items from all across the globe. And it makes sense because Amaz-O was going all across the globe during the peak of his popularity, meaning that he could easily acquire so many magical items for all of his magic acts. And it makes a whole lot of sense and explains all the plot holes that we have to Jonathan Schiller. But you might say that in Goosebumps Horror Town, Amaz-O is in the game, and so is Jonathan Schiller. They both can't be the same, but I think that Amaz-O that we see in Goosebumps Horror Town is completely different. One, mainly due to, him having a completely different origin than the Amaz-O from Bad Hair Day. I do not own Amaz-O, so I'm not 100% sure on that game, and I do not own Jonathan Schiller either. But basically, his origins, Amaz-O's origins, is that he was cursed by the Muglani or something like that to transform into, I think, a were-rabbit, most likely. And so that's sort of the origins for Amaz-O, the magician in Goosebumps Horror Town, which is completely different from the one in the book, so they have to be two completely separate people. So that leaves the door open for Jonathan Schiller in the game to be the real Amaz-O. And also the timing is perfect for Amaz-O to work for Horrorland, because in the end of the book, Amaz-O was ready to retire. That possibly means that he's, at an older age, since he's wanting to retire and all that stuff, so he gave the mantle to the main protagonist in Bad Hair Day. And so then he transformed himself back into a human and worked at Horrorland selling his magical items and playing some dangerous games. So really that's all I have for this video. I'm so sorry guys for this only being 12 minutes long. That's shorter than my usual, but kind of happy about that. So they're not overly long. Like most of my videos are 15 minutes long or so, so that's sort of a good thing, sort of a bad thing. But anyway, guys, I hope you guys enjoyed this video, and if you did, comment down below what you think about this theory. Do you think Jonathan Schiller is Amaz-O? And if not, who do you think Jonathan Schiller is, or do you think he's just a normal person? But anyway, guys, comment down below what you guys think, and that is the end of my video.